Hello everyone, welcome to another light novel review video. Last week we reviewed volume 1 of Grimgar, today we're doing volume 2. Like last week's video, I'm going to talk about the plot first, talk about the characters, talk about the themes, what I liked, what I disliked, and then at the very end I'm going to give it a review from A+ all the way to F. If you enjoy videos like this, please let me know in the comments, and I might actually start reviewing other light novels depending on your suggestions down in the comments. And hit the like button, subscribe, and share. And let's begin with Grimgar Phalanx and Ash, volume 2, Everything Precious. Just right off the bat, volume 2 starts out really strong and gets your attention immediately. Haru and his team are back from killing goblins and just selling their loot, and the city gets attacked immediately, separating Haru and his friends from each other because there's a giant crowd of people that are panicking and they end up getting pulled away from each other. Haru gets stuck by himself in this little marketplace area with an old lady who keeps like chastising him for not being manly, basically. And he realizes that they're getting attacked by orcs. An orc ends up finding him and attacking him. There's actually a really funny moment where Haru's like, man, I don't owe this lady anything. I don't need to help her. I need to get the fuck out of here. And then he immediately turns back to go help the lady. And the first thought he has is, why am I doing this?
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
But fighting this orc eventually leads to Haru being chased down, and Renji ends up saving him. And then Renji gets into a fight with the leader of the orcs that are attacking the city. Renji ultimately wins, but he's very reckless. I actually have argued that he's very similar to like some shonen anime protagonists, because he kind of is. We're just gonna put a pin in that for now, and I'll bring that back up in future videos. But eventually he does beat the orc, and the rest of the orcs actually back off, because we find out in this volume that orcs actually do follow some kind of honor code, which is interesting actually. And they actually will back off if you beat their leaders. And Haru seeing Renji fight the orcs off actually sets up Haru's overall character arc of trying to better himself to be as strong, or at least in Renji's general vicinity of strength. He sees that he could be better if he works harder at it, and he wants to be like Renji. Haru goes off and actually meets up back with his friends, and they go to a bar, hang out again, have character moments, and he starts telling everyone about what happened with Renji. They then go off and hunt goblins. They unfortunately realize that there's a bunch more goblins than usual, and they are better equipped. In the light novel, they don't give an exact understanding of why this is. In the light novel, they just kind of like say, oh shit, there's a lot of goblins here. Let's just move on to somewhere else. And they end up going to the Cobalt Mines. Same mines where Mary's original party died in. On the way there, they meet some kobolds, and they get into a bit of a skirmish with them. There's only 2 of them, but these 2 kobolds actually ended up messing up Haru and his party a little bit. Not in terms of like damage or anything like that, but they were freaking them out because they're a new thing they're fighting that they've never fought before. Everyone but Ranta actually froze up and started panicking until Mary gave them all a little speech, and then they started to focus again, and they ended up taking care of the goblin. I want to point out again that Ranta was one of the ones that did not freeze up. Actually stayed focused on what he needed to do. And he did initially have a little trouble fighting the Cobalt, but he didn't freak out like the rest of them. However, Ranta, throughout this entire volume, is spewing out a bunch of toxic, annoying bullshit. They eventually get into the mine, fight some Kobolds, and Ranta wants to fight one of them alone. He doesn't tell everyone why he's doing this, but he wants to be left alone to fight the Kobold. Ranta fights this Kobold to the point where he is basically exhausted, and the story refers to his eyes as being bloodshot. But eventually, he does kill the Kobold when the Kobold actually is so tired that Ranta has an easy time killing him. Eventually, they head back to their home because Haru deems that they've had enough time actually killing Kobold, and they should just head back to sell off their item. After that, they go to get some food, and Ranta tries to make everyone laugh. He does this by doing a little dumb dance thing. Everyone is annoyed with him at this point, but they're also trying to not laugh at it because it is actually kind of funny for them. And they'd rather pretend like it's not funny than give Ranta the satisfaction of knowing that he's able to make them laugh. Haru ends up disrupting Ranta, trying to make Mary laugh, and Ranta gets mad and spits up all over everyone's food because he decides to just spit on their food like an asshole. Can I just say that the self-control of the Grimgar characters when it comes to Ranta is significantly better than mine? If I was there, I would have put Ranta's nose into the back of his head. Haru starts to actually think at this point that maybe they should get rid of Ranta, because from his perspective, he does nothing but cause problems in the party. I also want to point out that Haru did not even think about the fact that Ranta was one of the only few people in their party that did not freeze up when fighting kobolds, because he makes everyone so uncomfortable, and he's just quite frankly incredibly annoying. They go out again to go kill more kobolds, and by the way, 90% of this book is them hanging out in the Cobalt mine. And one specific thing happens in the mines that actually shows you just how different Ranta and Haru actually are. I didn't mention this earlier, but this is probably a good time to bring this up. Ranta at one point rips the nose rings out of the Cobalts in a very violent manner. Haru likes to have more of a respectful way of taking off the rings out of their nose, and he tries to be kind and respectful to the dead. At one point, they find Cobalts asleep, and Ranta actually suggests that they kill them and take their loot. Haru and everyone in their party found this disgusting and just decided to ignore it. Ranta goes on an entire rant about morality and how it's dumb and blah, 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 blah. It's something that has clearly been told to him by the Dread Knight. He doesn't clearly understand what he's saying. He's just kind of spewing some random stuff out that he's heard from Dread Knights before. Ranta's kind of like a Facebook mom. Gets his education from a very questionable source and then repeats it. But he does this specifically because it makes his argument sound smarter. Almost anything out of Ranta's mouth, don't listen to what he's saying. Listen to what he does and think about the situation that they are in. Ranta in this scene is being pragmatic more than anything else. Think about the situation they are in. They are in enemy territory, surrounded by Cobalts around, and if these things wake up, they could call out and attack them. Not only that, they are asleep and easy targets for loot, and they need money to survive. While yes, morally, this is really f***ed up, later on in the story, Chihiro puts one of the Cobalts to sleep, and then they kill it. From this point in the story onward, Haru needs to actually become more pragmatic, and Ranta's arc is going to be basically becoming more empathetic towards people around him. Both of these characters have what each other lacks. After Haru and his friends kill more Cobalts, they go back to Alterna to rest and sell their stuff. And this is where the point where Haru decides that he needs to kick Ranta out of the party for the sake of the rest of the party. And this is one of the things that I think that the anime and the manga actually didn't get quite right in terms of what is actually happening in this scene. Ranta and Haru are discussing why Ranta has such a problem with communication and why Ranta is to blame for a lot of the problems in their party. And Haru is very right. Ranta is pretty toxic in their party. But Ranta's one of the best fighters in their party. And he pulls his weight constantly. He's also kind of nitty and messes up once in a while. But so does Haru and Yume. But no one else wants to talk about those mistakes because Ranta is such a douchebag, they only see his negative parts. Ranta is got a point. Ranta, in terms of socializing, he's an absolute shithead. But he's a really good party member to have because he will go out of his way to save other party members and help pick up the slack where it falls down. Haru hesitates, Ranta gives him for it and gets his attention back on fighting properly. Moguzu needs backup, Ranta is the best one to be put in to help Moguzu. Mary's feeling a little down sometimes. Ranta will say something stupid or try to make her laugh, but at least he's the only one that actually does it. The rest of them are too hesitant to even try because they all think she's made of like tissue paper at this point in terms of emotional strength. And sometimes he'll ask questions that Haru's too scared to ask. But a lot of party members don't want to admit to those positives that Ranta has, mainly because he's such a heel. Ranta argues that they use him as a scapegoat to ignore their own misgivings. I still think this is actually him gaslighting a little bit, or he's projecting really hard. But the point is, Ranta and Haru are both in the wrong in the situation, but they also both have a point. Haru wants to actually have Ranta communicate better. Ranta argues that certain things don't always need to be completely communicated, like verbally. And he wants Haru to understand that everyone else in their party also makes mistakes and fucks up all the time. But nobody else gives those other people in the party for it the way that they give it to Ranta. Funny enough, I've already made videos talking about Ranta as a character. I actually might make another one in the future because those videos might be a little outdated. But if you want to check them out, check the link in the upper right corner or check the description. Or check the comments. After this point, the story fucking like goes full throttle. You go back to the Cobalt mines, they eventually mess up and a Cobalt actually does start calling out and sets the alarm off for all the Cobalts. And everything just goes downhill after this. Cobalts are chasing them down, and eventually they do escape. However, Ranta gets left behind in a very heroic moment of him letting Moguzu go up the ladder first because he's so much slower than he is, and then he got stuck at the very bottom and had to run away. And they then change the POV for the first time in the entire story from Haru to Ranta. And we get Ranta's internal monologue of him essentially knowing that he says certain things that make people upset. If he believes what he is saying, he's still going to say those things. There's also a lot of him not thinking before he says something. Ranta then realizes that he's extremely lonely. He's so lonely, in fact, that he gets to the point where he summons his demon Zodiac to keep him company. And then Zodiac proceeds to give him a bunch of verbal abuse. And like I said in past videos, Zodiac is a reflection of Ranta's own soul. So, every time Zodiac says something mean to Ranta, it's essentially him saying that to himself. Because Ranta does not like himself. But eventually, Haru and his friends actually do find Ranta. They have those funny little cute moments with Ranta being healed by Mary, Mary almost breaking his neck because Ranta was being an ass to Yume.
Be quiet and stay still. Or if you want, I can just stop healing you.
Mommy.
And then eventually, they find Mary's dead party members. They get into a skirmish with the party members, and they realize just how much stronger Mary's party members are than they are. But eventually, Mary uses D-Spell on all of them and turning them into ash. They then get attacked by Death Spot and have a giant skirmish with Death Spot and Death Spot's soldiers. By the way, for the record, I actually like Death Spot's fight in the light novel better than I like it in the anime. I said it. If you guys want me to talk about why that is, let me know in the comments. I'll make a video talking about it. But Haru realizes that they can't win against Death Spot, and he tells his friends to run away. And he tries to sacrifice himself. Haru at this point was on Death Spot's back, smacking him with the butt of his knife. But eventually, Death Spot does knock Haru off his back, and then proceeds to chase after Haru's friends. He then sees the gleaming light and stabs Death Spot in the back and kills him.
Where's he going? Wait, I won't let you go. Is that? I'm slow. Why am I so slow? But so is he. Is this the right spot?
They then go back to Alterna, have a drink, celebrate, and that is basically the plot of Volume 2. Now to talk about what I liked and I disliked about this volume. Immediately, what I liked is the fact that the pacing is just significantly better than the first volume. It's literally fight, talk, have character moments, fight, have character moments and talk, fight, have character moments and talk. Like, it's paced out much faster, but also it's spread out in between fights and more interesting character moments. Like, they still have those, like, annoying Ranta moments and the characters being themselves and being goofy, but they paced them out in a much better way in this volume. This book also shows the characters fighting a lot, and I mean a lot. These fuckers were fighting for a long time. Ranta and Moguzu especially were both basically wheezing by the end of the fight with Death Spot. I do like how they don't just continuously have them fighting the entire time. They do have moments where Haru actually suggests they have to rest, and it's implied that they have a lot of short rests in between, like, bigger fights. Because they definitely need it, and it gave me some D&D vibes. I also really love the moment when Haru saves his party by killing Death Spot is actually played up as a kind of a joke. Haru thinks that the only way to save everyone is to sacrifice himself, and he has all this big emotional moment in his mind where he knows he's gonna die, all this stuff. But then the fucking Cobalt just ignores him, runs after his friends, and he just backstabs them, and then he's on the floor and yells at them to come back to pick him up. Hey guys, I'm actually okay. Can you come back, please? And Death Spot sees him as such a little threat that he doesn't bother killing him, and he chases after his friend instead. Haru being so pathetic and insignificant is what made Death Spot let his guard down, and Haru made him pay for it. Mary's character arc was finished in here. At least her character arc when it comes to her old party finishes in this book. You see moments of her actually trying to open up with Haru and people in the party. In the last video, I talked about how Moguzu kind of felt like he was getting shafted by the story. It's not like he's getting shafted in this one very much, but he's not really given much else to do aside from being a really good tank. His big moments are basically taking on a lot of kobolds and at one point holding off Death Spot by himself. Not much attention is paid to him throughout the book, and you can also say the same for a lot of the other characters, but a lot of the other characters don't die in the next volume. For some reason, I expected him to have more things to do in this, but he kind of doesn't. It makes me ask, why were people so sad when he dies in volume 3? Like, in the anime, I get why, if you go from the anime to the light novel, because they give him a lot more characterization in the anime, but in the light novel, they kind of give him barely much to do. In terms of Haru, I think the story does a really good job of showing his hypocrisy and showing where he needs to grow. Like I said earlier on, Haru refused to kill kobolds while they were asleep, but has no problem killing a kobold that they put to sleep. It's virtually the same thing. Hell, he even suggests putting the body of the kobold into a freaking pig pen and then watches the pigs eat the body. And well, everyone was grossed out because they didn't expect that to happen. How is that much better than killing them while they're asleep? And I think this is done on purpose to show you how Haru is just kind of a hypocrite and needs to grow past that. And while Ranta was separated from the party, they did show why Ranta's so useful in the party. He's able to keep things occupied by themselves or handle enemies by himself and pulls them away from the group. So keeping him around is more of a benefit than a hindrance, at least in terms of combat. And I think the overall theme of this book is not letting your dislike of someone blind you from their benefits. For example, you could go to your job, hate the crap out of your manager, then find out later that he's actually a very loving father. People are complicated. Now, I think that the writer could have done this a little better with Ranta, because we do mainly just see his negatives. That being said, I have a lot more to say about this topic specifically. I might make another video talking about this if you guys want me to, but for now, I have to move on because the video is getting a little long. But I have to say, I really enjoyed this book. I blew through this book really, really fast in like less than a day because of how good the pacing actually was. And honestly, I'd have to give this book an A-. Mostly really good. It sets up a lot of stuff for the future, like character arcs and events that are going to happen in the next book, while also staying focused on what's happening in this book. But it has some weird vibe when it comes to Ranta's themes and some really odd mixed themes. And I can't tell if it's because I'm misunderstanding what's going on in the story, or because the translation is off, or what the writer's trying to say. I'm not 100% sure, but it does kind of feel a little weird sometimes, at least in this one specifically. But let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Don't forget that I'm live streaming. Probably by the time you watch this video, I'll probably be live on Twitch and on YouTube. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!